Does anyone else feel instantly at ease when you hear this music? That laid-back New Orleans-style jazz, with just a hint of Gershwin. It feels like a cool glass of lemonade on a hot summer day. But what if I told you that the Bare Necessities was very nearly cut from the Jungle Book? Shocking, I know, but it was a close thing. Written by Terry Gilkyson, who contributed songs for such films as The Aristocats, Savage Sam, and The Moonspinners, which is another interesting film that I'd like to cover at some point. The Bare Necessities was part of a larger suite of songs he had composed for the film. But when director and longtime Disney story artist Bill Peet left midway through production, a whole lot of changes were made. Originally written as a dark and more faithful adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's original stories, Peet saw the source material's depth, danger, and complexity as an opportunity to tell a richer, more emotionally serious tale. But coming off the lukewarm reception of The Sword and the Stone, Walt Disney wanted the next project to be lighter, fun, and more broadly appealing. When Walt saw the original script and heard the somber tone of those early songs, he found it too dark for a family audience. Stepping in, he reportedly told the team, "The first thing I want you to do is not read the book." Peet and Disney had worked together for decades, and it was Peet who first brought the Kipling stories to Walt's attention. But this was the first time Disney had overtly overrode Peet's creative direction so dramatically. Feeling undermined and unwilling to compromise on what he saw as his artistic integrity, Peet walked away from the film and quit the studio. It was a sudden and significant departure, especially given that he had been with Disney since the 1930s. Woolley Reitherman would take over directing duties, and brought with him a singularly important part of the film, Mowgli. Reitherman's son, Bruce, would lend his voice to the film's young protagonist. His natural, unscripted delivery helped give Mowgli a genuine kid-in-the-jungle feel. His youthful innocence had already been on display the year prior in Disney's Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, where he voiced Christopher Robin.
There now, did I get your tail back on properly, ER?
No matter. Most likely lose it again anyway.
The elder Reitherman worked at the Disney Studios for 50 years, beginning his career as an animator and one of Walt's famed 9 Old Men. You'll probably recognize his work on Monstro the Whale, the dinosaur battle from Fantasia, and my personal favorite, the Headless Horseman. You know, the stuff of kids' nightmares. But Disney. He would move on to directing in the 1960s, working on such films as 101 Dalmatians, The Aristocats, and Robin Hood. And he is often recognized as a stabilizing creative force after Walt Disney's death in 1966. So let's take a look back at that 1967 animated classic, its bevy of Disneyland record releases, and why the Bare Necessities almost hit the cutting room floor. This is The Jungle Book.
It's been a long time in coming, but now, after 4 years, the announcement can be made. Walt Disney's most entertaining triumph in the art of animation is here. Ha ha! What have we here? It's Walt Disney's The Jungle Book.
Have you ever wondered why The Jungle Book looks just a little bit different than other Disney animated films? This is most likely due to the use of a technique called Xerography. This is where pencil drawings created by the animators are photocopied directly onto clear cells, or Xeroxed, bypassing the traditional and labor-intensive step of having inkers trace every drawing by hand. The result is a slightly harsher look to the lines in the animation, as the less polished pencil sketches are often included in the film. This wasn't the first time Disney had used this technique. But The Jungle Book was the first film to use the process more intentionally, allowing for more expressive lines in the work. It was one of the best examples of xerography being embraced as an artistic tool, not just as a cost-saving measure. And while I can appreciate using a technique like this for more creative expression, it's not without its caveats. Multiple shots within the film are direct copies, usually attempting to hide this fact by swapping day scenes for night. I'm willing to give Disney a break in instances where they've reused movement or reference material, as was the case in Robin Hood, but in general, this just isn't a great look.
You can look out for yourself, can you?
You have the word of Bagheera.
I understand that the studio was struggling at the time, not just financially, but also with Walt's passing, and there was no way for them to predict the eventual scrutiny these films would come under with the rise of computers and home video. All the same, I'd be willing to bet that someone with a keen eye noticed this overt cut and paste, even back then. Speaking of similarities, let's take a moment to examine and appreciate the film's antagonist. A certain cat who doesn't even appear until the 47th minute of a 78-minute movie.
Yes? Who is it?
It's me, Shere Khan.
Voiced by George Sanders, Shere Khan is often cited as one of the finest vocal performances in Disney animation. He brings a playful menace and sardonic wit to the character, all while presenting himself with polite, elegant phrasing. And if, like me, this reminds you of someone else, you shouldn't be surprised. To say that Scar and Shere Khan share a lineage would be pretty close to the actual truth. Sanders with his velvety, aristocratic voice, and Jeremy Irons with his Shakespearean gravitas feel almost like mirror images of one another. Both characters were intentionally drawn with angular features and a perpetual sneer, and both convey a sense of royalty, with something darker lurking just below the surface. But most of all, the animator who worked on Scar, Andreas Deja, was a huge fan of Milt Kahl, the animator for Shere Khan. Deja considered Kahl his greatest influence, analyzing his drawings frame by frame, and even collecting his rough animation to study timing and weight. After joining Disney in 1980, Deja visited Kahl at his home in Northern California, hoping he might mentor him. I asked him about animating, and he told me, "You're going to have to figure it out for yourself." It wasn't warm and fuzzy, but it was honest. Knowing what a profound influence Kahl played in Deja's aspirations, I find it so much more fun to see these characters side by side. And I think it's safe to say that Deja figured it out.
Well, it's a doobity-doo.
Which brings us back around to those songs. When director Bill Peet left the picture, Walt Disney brought in the Sherman Brothers to lighten up the mood. Their first task was deciding whether or not to keep any of the songs that Terry Gilkyson had composed. At first, this seemed unlikely, with half a dozen songs getting axed almost immediately. But one song had an infectious charm that matched the lighter, more playful tone of the reimagined story. You guessed it, the Bare Necessities. And even then, there was still some internal debate. Since it wasn't written by the Sherman Brothers, there was still hesitation about whether it would stylistically match the rest of the soundtrack. But Walt himself reportedly insisted that it stay, recognizing its appeal. And while I'm personally a fan of all the songs written by the Sherman Brothers for this film, I can't imagine this movie without the Bare Necessities. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, but would watch Dr. Doolittle's Talk to the Animals take home the prize. So let's talk records. We've got the original cast soundtrack, which is an interesting mix of underscore, songs, and dialogue from the film. It's almost like a strange hybrid of the Storyteller album and the eventual CD release of the soundtrack. A fun side note here, composer George Bruns, who handled the instrumental score for the film, was also working on a certain Disneyland attraction around the same time. See if you can guess what it was. The studio cast album, Songs from the Jungle Book and Other Jungle Favorites, was a bit of a stylistic departure for the Disneyland label. Steeped in late 60s grooviness, this album feels more like a Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem record.
Don't try to kid me, man cub, and don't get in a stew. What I desire is man's red fire, so I can be like you. Give me the secret, man cub. Just clue me what to do. Give me the power of man's red flower and make my dreams come true. I wanna be like you. I wanna walk like you.
Turning to the story albums, we have multiple options. The Story and Songs of the Jungle Book serves as your main Storyteller album, with Dal McKennon playing the part of Bagheera the Panther, who narrates the story. The album switches back and forth between McKinnon's narration and clips of Sebastian Cabot's Bagheera from the film. But McKennon did such a great job of imitating Cabot's performance that you really don't notice. I mean, you're going to notice it now because I pointed it out, but otherwise, you may not have noticed.
We made a terrible fuss, and up to the very moment we were settling down to sleep up high in a tree, I was forced to repeat again and again how impossible it would be for a young boy to survive alone in the jungle.
Now, get some sleep. We've got a long journey ahead of us tomorrow.
I want to stay in the jungle.
Huh? You wouldn't last one day.
I'm not afraid. I can look out for myself.
Up next, and acting as a sort of sequel, we have more Jungle Book, Further Adventures of Baloo and Mowgli. Surprisingly, Disney brought back Phil Harris and Louis Prima for this album, along with Dal McKennon, once again as Bagheera, and Ginny Tyler playing Mowgli. The album features 4 new songs, 2 of which were written by the Sherman Brothers. You would think with all of that, this album would be amazing, but it's just sort of middle of the road. The songs are okay, but the overall production just feels like it was done on a budget. And maybe it was. I'm sure the cost to bring back Harris and Prima for this sort of a record production was fairly cost prohibitive. But it sounds like they just stuck them in a cheap recording booth and called it a day.
We had fun together, didn't we, Baloo?
You better believe it.
Man cub, on behalf of all the other animals in the jungle, I extend our felicitations for this joyous reunion.
Crazy. I don't know what all that fancy jive means, but I like the sound of it.
Mowgli, I can't toss them fancy words around like old Baggy does, but I just want to tell you that, gee, my heart is bouncing with a real happy beat.
I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the unique and fascinating history of the Jungle Book. I had multiple requests for this film and really enjoyed learning more about it. If there's a Disney album or film you'd like to see here on Once Upon a Record, please let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to keep hearing me talk about these old Disney productions, I hope you'll consider subscribing. So until next time, my name is Jay. Thanks for watching.